It's hard to believe that we've done 11 weeks of regular season. Now it's time for the good stuff. The high school football playoffs are here. Under the Lights podcast, ready to break down all of that action for you. I'm Kyle Parmley, Gary Lloyd, Jeff Allison joining us today. Me and Gary have been doing Starnes Media football coverage for several years. Jeff runs the Alabama 6A football and Alabama 7A football accounts and websites. Guys, we got a lot to talk about today. Thanks for joining us. Gary, do you have any special rituals that come with November and playoff time?
I actually do. My ritual is actually sitting across from me in the office here. It's to order a new batch of hand warmers and toe warmers. Now, this Friday, that's not going to matter. It's going to be the rain gear instead. But that is my yearly ritual, is when November hits, before that first November Friday, I'm getting new hand warmers and toe warmers for playoff football.
Yeah, I actually always keep a set of hand warmers in my backpack, year-round. Never know when I'm going to need them. Last Thursday at that Homewood football game I was at, I went and dug them out of the bottom of the bag and found them and made sure to replace them the next day. Jeff, what do you do getting ready for playoff season?
I don't have many rituals. You would think after about 16 years covering this that I would have something that I do, but I think my ritual is a pack of crackers and my Mountain Dew Zero before the game is sort of my ritual that I do.
Love that. Gonna need it on Friday night. Like Gary said, we might be dodging some raindrops. Some games are going to be on Thursday in this first round. But we want to talk about Class 6A, Class 7A, kind of preview the playoffs and kind of what we think, what you could see. But Gary, I want to give you an opportunity before we start. Let's just kind of say, well, congrats to John Carroll in 5A for making the playoffs for the first time since 2009. And they are 8-2 in the regular season for the first time since, I look back, it's like the mid-1990s. And Gary, you're going to go see them on Friday night. Man, that's awesome for the Cavs. What a great season.
Yeah, I can't wait to go out there. Fairview High School, never been. Been talking to some people about some maybe food stops along the way because, I'm going to go through Rimlap and Cleveland and Bluntsville and all these areas to get there. So I'm looking for a hole in the wall, a small place off the side, and just really see hopefully a really competitive football game.
Hope so. And then Jeff, tell me if you agree with this. The most dangerous team not in the playoffs this year would have been Spain Park. The Jags went 7-3. If they finally got healthy towards the end. If they had found a way into the 7A playoffs, that's a team that nobody would have wanted to face.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, it just validates their big win that they had over Hewitt-Trussville late in the season. So definitely team that was on the rise, and I'm sure better things ahead for them.
Absolutely. So with that being said, what we're going to do, let's just kind of run through the 7A bracket. These are all first-round matchups. We'll go through them in order that they are on the bracket. So, two games that we call out in a row will play each other in the next round. If they, the winners will play each other. So we'll start at the top. Central Phoenix City hosting Davidson. And then Baker is hosting Auburn. Jeff, I know I got to see Central the first game of the year when they played Hewitt-Trussville, and they already look dang impressive, and they look like they have not slowed down a bit. You've seen them a little more recently. The Red Devils look like one of the favorites in 7A.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Kyle, when they come out for their warm-ups and they're going out in lines of players on the field, they look like a college football team. Mm-hmm. The size they have on their linemen, offensive, defensive linemen, is just there's no one that really compares to their size that they have. I know Clay's got that big offensive line group, but for all the players they have, when they line up, they look like a college football team. And, one thing about them, Andrew Alford, their transfer that came in this year, came from a smaller school. And I was sort of surprised that he's had the success right away that they plugged him in, and he's been, a difference maker at quarterback for them. And, when you have the best receiver in Cam Coleman at receiver, it's just, you've got big advantage there. But, they have the big target on them. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with them. Definitely been my number one team here lately, and they're definitely going to be a difficult out.
Yeah, and also, so if Baker and Auburn match up, how do you see that first round matchup going? Because the winner of that would likely get Central.
Baker, I got a chance to see them against Mountain Brook. Their quarterback Josh Flowers, Mr. Everything, I call him. He just almost 2,000 yards passing, 1,300 yards rushing. He's going to keep them in the game offensively, but I think on the defensive side of the ball, Baker's going to have a hard time stopping Auburn. The one good thing that I guess an advantage for Baker is Auburn's quarterback that's been out has been back for like 2 games. Jackson Kilgore was hurt like the second or third game of the year. He's been out a stretch, but he is back. So that's going to help the Auburn offense, but he's just going to be rusty coming in. But better him. But they got super sophomore Omar Mabson that's done really well for them carrying the football, and Tyler Flakes. But that's going to be a good game. But I see, to me, Auburn's got the advantage on the road.
Yeah, Baker was really impressive coming up here to Mountain Brook and put together a big second half to come back and beat the Spartans last week. Move on down a little bit. You've got the 10-0 Mary Montgomery football team taking on Dothan in the first round. Also in that little pod, Enterprise will play Daphne. Gary, I hate to think that, we've seen a few like 10-0 teams over the years kind of get into the playoffs, and it doesn't quite work out for them. But any of these 4 teams kind of strike your eye?
Mine? I mean,
Yeah.
I haven't seen any of them, so I'll defer to Jeff on that. But an interesting tidbit I saw with this Dothan Mary Montgomery game, you look for common opponents at times and stuff like that. Just to, every game is its own game, but just to see how did this team play against that one and this other team. They both beat Baker by the exact same score, 35-14. So maybe it'll be a really good first round game, but we'll see what this Mary Montgomery team is made of, and if that 10-0 record is, I mean, it's legit. They did it, but if it holds up in the playoffs.
Jeff, how good is MGM?
Yeah. The good thing about I like about Mary Montgomery is their quarterback, Jared Hollins, who's a South Alabama commit. He's thrown for 2,300 yards, 29 touchdowns. So he's going to keep them in the game offensively. They can score some points. The question is, they probably haven't seen the single wing attack of Dothan. They're going to pound the football. And so it's going to be a very different contrast to games. This Dothan team is just scrappy. They're going to put up a fight. And like Gary said, that 35-14 is a common opponent. One thing, Dothan had to win on the road while Mary had the home game against Baker. Don't know if that means much, but there was a little difference there. But, Dothan scores a lot of points. Mary Montgomery scores a lot of points. Like I said, I think it'll be interesting. The Vikings only give up 8 points a game. So we'll see. I mean, I don't think they've been tested like Dothan has in that region. But this is going to be, I think, the best of all the 8 games. To me, this is one's going to be the best of the night.
Yeah, awesome. We'll see how that one shakes out. It wouldn't be the most shocking thing in the world if a number 4 seed out of that region were to win, but MGM's got a great season going. We'll see if they can keep it up. The bottom half of the bracket features a lot of teams that we have seen throughout the year. We'll start with James Clemens hosting Hoover. Hoover gets into the playoffs despite a 4-6 record. They get the 4 seed in Region 3 based on that head-to-head win over Spain Park. We didn't realize at the time how big that win would be. But another note, Hoover coach Wade Waldrop's going back up to the program that he built. He took over James Clemens in the second year of the school's existence, and he put together an incredible program there before moving on to Florence and now to Hoover. So a little bit of a homecoming. Gary, you got any thoughts on how this one shakes out?
Both have lost to Mountain Brook this year, so there is that common opponent. But I don't know a ton about James Clemens. I think Hoover might be able to find some success with some of the new things they've been trying offensively, and I think that's kind of what maybe a little bit of bias toward the teams we cover and the test that is Region 3, but it seems like Hoover is really, really trending in the right direction. Now, I mean, you still got to go, a long trip first round on the road and, at a region champ. So, but I don't know. I kind of, I feel like Hoover has enough in the tank to get by James Clemens, but I mean, I certainly wouldn't be surprised otherwise. But this feels like a good competitive game to me.
I agree. And then right below them, Hewitt-Trussville gets Bob Jones. Hewitt-Trussville has made it to the second round of the playoffs. Like I think the last 6 times they've been in the postseason. Jeff, any thoughts on that group of 4? I think I was looking the other day. The last 6 years, Region 3 has swept 5 of those years, and 2019 was the only year that Region 4 has gotten any win in recent years. So Region 3 is really taking a hold of this, but Hoover and Hewitt-Trussville are in this little pod we got.
Yeah, I think it's going to continue this season. I look for all 4 of them to win, but to me, this Hewitt team is interesting to me on their, how well they played certain games and then how low they played in big games. So I don't think Bob Jones has no chance. Their starting quarterback, Dylan Willingham, was hurt in the middle of the season, so they're having to go with the sophomore, and Tyron Washington is 1,300 yards rushing, and that's about all they have on offense. And I think Hewitt's going to roll. Got a chance to talk to the Florence radio guys last night, and they're not coming in here expecting to beat Thompson. They've got a young, Wade Waldrop was at Florence a couple years ago,
right,
before he was at James Clemens, and they really liked him there. Thought that he was going to really put a lot in that program. But they're a young football team. They've got a senior quarterback, Leo Glover, that's really good. He's committed to North Alabama. But Florence has 2 sophomore cornerbacks, and they're going to get tested. When you go up against those Thompson receivers, that's going to be a tough one. But it's going to be interesting. They think they'll keep it close for a half, and then Thompson will dominate the second half.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Thompson will host Florence. That's actually going to be on Thursday night. So if you got nothing to do Thursday night, head on out there and check that first round game out. And then the last game in the 7A bracket, Austin is hosting Vestavia Hills. I'm planning on being at this. We saw this game last year, and Vestavia rolled. It kind of looks like there's a reason to believe this game will be a lot more competitive than that. Austin lost their first 2 region games, but since then, since they were 2-2, they've won 6 straight games, and none of them have been remotely close. Now, you can say some of that is the level of competition, but at the same time, not everybody can put together 6 straight wins of 21-plus points. So Austin coming in, they feel good about things. This Vestavia team, the last 3 weeks, they have not allowed a point. So after Hewitt-Trussville kind of smacked them around a little bit, and Peyton Floyd scored 6 touchdowns and was a magnet for the end zone, Vestavia said, that's enough of that. And they've put together some defensive shutouts the last several weeks. So, Gary, what do you see out of that bottom half that kind of has got your attention?
Yeah, I mean, Thompson, just too much firepower, too much experience there. I think they roll. And then, yeah, I mean, this Vestavia Austin game from last year, I think it was like 52-10 or like, wasn't it? I think we're getting a lot.
Yep.
I think
62-10.
I think we're getting a lot closer of a game. Now, that's easy to say when it's a 42-point differential from last year. So they just got to keep it within 6 touchdowns and it's closer. But I think we see a more competitive game, but I think ultimately Vestavia kind of asserts its will. I mean, Kyle, you mentioned the level of competition, and you're right. Austin has blown out teams since then, but Vestavia opponents are 55 and 44. Austin's opponents are 44 and 56. I mean, there's a story there, and I think Vestavia is going to be ready.
What's interesting about Austin is, they run two quarterbacks, and they average about 36 a game. But Judd Bailey, J.L. Davis are their two quarterbacks, and they pretty much have the same stats, which is to me pretty interesting that he's going with two. Bailey has 904 yards, 8 touchdowns. Davis has 982 yards and 9 touchdowns. So, I don't know what he sees, Coach Perkins sees in that system. But like you said, Kyle, it seems like they played a lot better here in the second half in the season, and they've been using these two guys regular on offense.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to being up there on Friday night. Always good to catch up with Coach Perkins. I remember talking to him in the summer, and he definitely did not let me in on the idea that they were going to be 8-2. He was definitely given the whole, we'll be lucky to make the playoff speech. But good to see Austin. They got the 2 seed in that region. But all right, so that's 7A. Gary, I know you love to look at the Sports Writers Association poll every week. If you've noticed the last 5 or 6 weeks, the 7A poll has gone. Central has gotten 18 or 19 first place votes, and Thompson is slotted in at number 2 with 1 first place vote. And the owner of that first place vote has been me, because I've seen nothing to lead me to believe that Thompson's not the best team in the state. In 7A. I think they fell down when Clay-Chalkville beat them, because that's what voters do. You see a team lose, you're supposed to knock them down a notch. I don't know, but Gary, what's your read on Thompson? This team has won 100 state championships in a row. I guess it's actually 4, but what do you think? Do they look as good as they normally do?
Well, I mean, I think that was kind of what we said, like before the season started, or maybe after like a couple games, where it was like, they're still obviously really, really good, but maybe they've come down a notch. The last few years we've been used to a name like Jeremiah Alexander or Peter Woods, and we thought maybe this defense wouldn't. They've obviously got studs in the secondary, but it was like, will that front seven be able to produce the way it has the last few years? Well, yeah. So yeah, I mean, they're just, especially on defense, really, really good. Offense seems like you can, maybe limit them at times. Hoover and Vestavia held them to 21, but the defense in those 2 games allowed 14 points total. So they're tough to beat in both ways. So week to week, we'll see what Thompson we're going to get, especially on offense. But it seems like they've got more than enough in the tank to get to Tuscaloosa and make another run at this blue map.
Here's a crazy stat, Kyle, that with Thompson that many people might not know. Their 2 leading tacklers, one of them is a safety, and one of them is a corner. When was the last team, a top team like this? Caleb Harris leads the team in tackles, and Anquan Fagans is second on the team in tackles. No linebacker, no defensive front guy in there in the top 2, just those 2 guys. And to me, that's a crazy stat.
Well, if you were told that on the surface, you would think, well, that means that defense is terrible. But for this one, I think
they give up a lot of run offense.
Yeah, but I think in this case, it's the exact opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think it shows how versatile those 2 guys are.
Yeah.
That look at Harris's stats. As a safety, he's got 10 tackles for loss, a sack, but he's got 3 picks. And Fagan's the same way. He's got 4 tackles for loss and 3 picks. So those guys are at the line of scrimmage sometimes, and then they're on the back end with that can defend. So you don't know where they're at. That's what I think makes that defense special, is they can be that extra defender on the line when they need them, or they can drop back in pass coverage.
Do we think Jared Smith is going to take away some of those tackles this week?
I don't know.
I don't either.
Same. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
I'll be at that game to find out.
There you go. Yeah, so, all right. Jeff, well, tell me, all right, so Central has looked as good as they have all year. They're number one in the end of season rankings. What is it going to take for somebody to give them a run? Like, what is somebody going to have to do in order to even challenge them?
Well, what you got to do is you have to. Here's the problem. The problem is you play Coleman straight up, and you let him go off, and then that's a big issue, as he did at Auburn. We had those 4 touchdowns and almost 300 yards receiving. A lot of teams have been trying to double him and leave other guys open and say, "Hey, we're gonna make other guys beat you." And I'm sure if Auburn gets in that game with them again, they're not going to let Coleman go loose like they did last time. They're going to bracket him and not let him touch the ball and say, "Hey, somebody else is going to have to step up and beat us." And that's, to me, that's what's going to happen. Their running attack is very good. It's been there when it's needed. Like I said, the other receivers that Central has is very good. And so to me, they have the most balance of everybody. They have the best, I won't say the best defense, but they're pretty good on the defensive side. But one thing that Auburn did that I was kind of surprised is they could run the football in Central. They were just chewing them up on the ground. So it'll be interesting to see again, in the playoffs how all that works out. But to me, when I've seen them, they've got talent. I mean, they got talent everywhere, and so that's what I'm saying is Thompson's got talent. Central has talent. I don't think anyone has more talent in those two teams than 7A.
So with that being said, Gary, you got anybody else outside of those two that you think is capable of making a run into the playoffs?
I'm surprised neither of you have mentioned the team, but I would say Hewitt-Trussville. That 2 seed for them, I know, is important to get that this year. I mean, so you don't have to go up north, and you get in, potentially a game where you're playing James Clemens or Hoover in the second round. So I think it sets up somewhat favorably for the Huskies to maybe make a run to the semifinals and maybe meet up with Thompson again. But I think for Hewitt, for me, it seems like they know what their strengths are, but they also know what that weakness is, which that secondary has been kind of inconsistent at times. They're playmakers back there. We've seen them put it all together, and we've seen them have absolute busts of games like they did against Spain Park. So I think that was probably a big focus on this, using this last week as their open week to get healthy and put in some things. So I think they've got enough in the tank to get back to a game against Thompson and, maybe keep that game a bit closer than they did in Trussville earlier this year.
Yeah, and I agree with Gary. I think Hewitt's a wild card, as we know. Vestavia is a wild card because on any given night, they could definitely. They have the guys, the offensive power to put up something to have problems for Thompson, for sure, to be in a game. It's just, can they? What team are you going to get?
Absolutely. On that vein, I'm still 100% convinced that Vestavia Hills, if they get past Austin in the first round, will have something for Thompson in the second round. I mean, like ever since Robert Evans got hired at Vestavia before last season, like he's talked about beating Thompson. Like that's the goal, is to face Thompson twice in a season. And they could very well do that again. So don't think for a second that ever since that Hewitt-Trussville game that they lost kind of cemented them as the 3 seed, meaning that they would have to face Thompson in the second round were they to get there, that they haven't been poring over every piece of that game plan. They won't admit that, but he will have something in store for this. And yes, on this playoff preview podcast last year, I said the same thing, that I thought Vestavia would win a state championship in the next 3 to 4 years. May not be this year, but I still think that is in the cards for them. This program is on the rise, and if they continue to play great defense like they have the last 3 weeks, granted, the competition has not been the same level as the Thompson and Hewitt-Trussville teams. But if that defense is just a little bit better than it had been, they've got something potential to make a run for sure.
And Rob said that, the big thing that he knows this year with his team is he doesn't have the 5 linemen that he needs to compete against a Thompson.
Yep.
So, he knows he's going to have to out-trick him, outplay him in certain areas, things like that, because when you don't have that size, it makes a huge difference. And it showed in the first game that offensively they really couldn't do much. They couldn't run the ball like they normally could. And so it will be interesting to see the second time what goes on. And, I'll say, too, we're in the playoffs. So, to me, the pressure of the playoffs is on Thompson and Central. And I think that's a big factor that we sometimes just take for granted, that, hey, we're going to see Central and Thompson in the final game in Tuscaloosa. I don't know, because again, that pressure is there, and it's a real thing where I know there's times where Central, I thought for sure last year, I thought they were the better team that should have been there and didn't make it, and Auburn got them the second time. So you just don't know how it's all going to shake out.
Yeah,
I've got Central versus Thompson in my state championship.
I mean, either one of y'all got a dissenting opinion there? That we've talked about Hewitt and Vestavia being potential sleepers, but who do y'all think comes out with it?
I've got Central.
I've had Central my number 1 team, so that's just, I'm going to have to stick with them.
I'm going to make a prediction today that on that Wednesday afternoon in December, about a month from now, the Central Red Devils will not only take home the 7A football, they will also take home the flag football championship as well. So that could be a great day in Phoenix City. And with that, let's move on to 6A, guys. In 6A, there's kind of the same thing, the same vibe. There's two teams that stand above everybody else, seemingly. Saraland, last year's champion, has shown no signs of slowing down. And Clay-Chalkville, first-round playoff loss last year was really shocking. They've rebounded from that, revamped their offense, and they've been rolling all season long. They're 9-0. Everybody remembers that win at Thompson in the middle of the season. So twice as many teams in the 6A playoffs. Don't forget that either. 1 through 6A. 7A's got that condensed bracket, one less round. But guys, let's start. We'll just roll through it. At the top of the bracket, Saraland hosts McAdory in the first round. Carver Montgomery hosts Briarwood Christian. Hillcrest Tuscaloosa hosts St. Paul's, and Helena hosts Wetumpka. Saraland is obviously the favorite here. Gary, you've been a big fan of Helena all year. They've kind of met their match the last 2 games of the regular season with losses to Ben Russell and Vestavia. But you've seen Helena. Like, what made that team get off to such a hot start?
I mean, their defense has played well, but at times, but it's the running game. We saw it near the end of last year. I think Helena was like a 6-4, 7-4 type team last year, but saw them play at Briarwood last year, and then Briarwood go there this year. And Jordan Washington is just, I mean, he's just a different animal, as a 6A back. He's so good. Offensive line plays well. Quarterback Carson Acker makes some good decisions when he needs to. But I think they, all season, I've just thought they kind of have the type of team, the type of scheme, and, an elite running back, to make their way through 6A and, maybe make some noise here in November, not quite December.
Not quite December. Jeff, give us a read on. All right, so Hillcrest has they've flown under the radar as much as the number 3 team in 6A can. They've gone undefeated. They hadn't hardly played a close game. Tell us how good Hillcrest is, and you saw Carver Montgomery a couple of weeks ago. Kind of give us a read on them too.
Yeah, looking at Hillcrest, I mean, they are very, very good across the board. I mean, a lot of people, like you said, Kyle, don't really know them. They got a quarterback that came in this year, Bryson Kimbrough, and he's really, really good. They got Prince as a receiver, a guy, another like Cam Coleman type guy that can just jump out of the sky and catch a pass. But their defensive front is one of the top in 6A, and they don't get credit for really, like you said, because a lot of people don't know them, but they're going to be there when that matchup with Saraland comes up. If it happens, that's going to be a must-see game. I'm telling you right now. I would not just say that Saraland's just going to walk through the South. I would say Hillcrest is going to give them everything they need. Hillcrest also has the transfer from Northridge that came over this year, a defensive back that's going to Ole Miss commit, and they put him on offense and let him play a little bit there. And I'm telling you, Hillcrest is going to be a tough out in the playoffs. Carver, Montgomery, I did get to see them. They like to throw the ball all over the field, anytime, any place. And, defensively, they've lost some people from last year, but they want to try to get it and throw it and things like that. Like I said, their defense, they had 2 studs last year on defense or at Alabama. And so this year they're not quite as good on defense, but they'll be able to score some points.
What do you think about Gary? What do you think about Briarwood's chances against Carver? So Carver gets the 2 seed in that region by this Pike Road winning in that game, but Briarwood's a very, very interesting team heading into this playoffs.
Yeah, I would kind of see this. Jeff, you mentioned Carver liking to throw the ball. Like if that Briarwood defensive front can get pressured, the secondary plays well. When it's one-on-one type situations, that kind of thing. If they can put some pressure and force some throws, that Briarwood secondary is athletic enough to make some plays. And then on the other side, it kind of comes down to some health for Briarwood. They've had some nicks and bruises over the last, really all season. But if Luke Reynolds is healthy and running the ball well, Cooper Higgins, we know what we're getting with him. Just a really physical back. I think it could be a first 1 to 20 wins kind of game. So I think Briarwood certainly has a shot.
Yeah, I agree with Gary. I think the first 1 to 20 wins that game for sure.
Yeah, and then like Jeff mentioned, we could get a Saraland Hillcrest quarterfinal matchup, which would be pretty entertaining. But also for any folks in the Birmingham area that have not seen Saraland this year, there's reason for you to hope Briarwood wins, because if Briarwood wins, Saraland would come up here in the second round. You'd get a chance to see them as well. That'd be a fun night in the second round as well if we get there. So moving down the bracket a little bit, you've got Benjamin Russell hosting Sidney Lanier, Hueytown hosting Theodore, Pike Road is hosting Homewood, and Spanish Fort hosts Bessemer City. This is just kind of looking at these 4. Jeff, tell us a little bit about this Hueytown Theodore game, because this Theodore team has been like fringe top 10 all year, and partly because you get some losses playing in a tough region like they've got.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I was big on Theodore last year, and they had a lot of defensive guys that graduated, but they're still pretty salty on defense. Their key with Hueytown is, will they be able to score points, because Hueytown's going to be able to score some points. And as I tell everybody, the Hueytown defense is pretty good. And so I think Theodore's going to have a tough time scoring enough points to stay up with Hueytown. But that, to me, for a first round game in 6A, to me, that's like one of the best matchups in the whole bracket.
Yeah, yeah. And then Homewood heading to Pike Road, it's kind of it's a tough deal for Homewood, because they're the only team that beat Benjamin Russell in region play. And then they get the pleasure of going to Pike Road to play what is obviously a really good football team. Gary, what's been your read on the Patriots so far this year?
I mean, it's been cool seeing so much success for a team that lost so much off of its previous year's team. I mean, we can talk about how Homewood started this year, but we can also talk about how good their first three opponents were and how they're all here in the playoffs as well. So I think this is just a really tough draw. I mean, them getting, wherever that line runs that puts them in the South. I think this is a tough trip for a young team, but they're going to go there and compete. And, it is November and Freddie Lawrence is still on those sidelines. So, Homewood may go down there and shock us all. We'll see.
The Pike Road team is a young team. They've got youngsters all through their offense. I mean, their quarterback's a freshman, very good player. Their big running back is a sophomore. And so they have younger players that, again, this playoff push, you just never know how they're going to react once you get in there. But they offensively, they're a very young team, and they're going to be a very good team for years to come. But Blake Blockton, an Auburn commit, anchors their defensive line, and he's a stud for them.
Jeff, how good is Spanish Fort this year?
Defensively, they're probably the top 3, 4, or 5 teams in 6A. They are very, very good on the defensive front in linebackers, and they don't give up many points. Their problem is on the offensive side of the ball. I just don't know. Again, every game that they're going to be playing in the playoffs, they're going to be in it because of their defense. But they could lose a game. Say they lost to, I think, Theodore this year, like 7-3, or beat Theodore like 7-3 or 8-3 or something like that. That's the type of game that they could win, but it's also the type of game they could lose just because the offense has not been consistent.
Yeah, so Spanish Fort gets Bessemer City in the first round, and like you said, they, that defense is stout. And you're right, that Theodore game was an 8-3 score. I don't see many football games played with a score line like that anymore. That's an Iowa football number right there. All right, the next set of games we'll talk about: Parker hosting Mae Jemison, Oxford hosting Athens, Gadsden City hosts Gardendale, and Hartselle hosting Centerpoint. Parker has been a team that we've heard about all summer, all fall. They've been as good as advertised. Oxford will be an interesting game if Parker and Oxford meet up in the second round. Good to see Gadsden City kind of get back to some winning ways. And then this Hartselle team, it's Hartselle all over again. They're steady. They have great regular seasons. They hang out in that middle tier of the top 10 all year long. Jeff, what teams out of that little pocket have some potential to win a few playoff games?
Well, I think Parker has been my team this summer that I've sort of jumped on the bandwagon with them and had them in my top 5 all year. They've just got a lot of talent. Malik Muhammad has been hurt, their starting quarterback, and I believe he's supposed to be back for the playoffs. He hurt his shoulder in a bad play against against Woodlawn that wasn't even I don't even know why he was really playing in that game. But if he comes back, they're really going to make a big push in the playoffs. So to me, I could see them rolling along and doing well. Like you said, Oxford, another good team. Mason Mims at quarterback, very solid junior quarterback that's had a great year. Very good defensive front for Oxford. They've won some big games, and the Gadsden City game's going to be that game's going to light up the scoreboard. It might be the first 1 to 60 on that one wins. There's going to be probably 100 points in that game, but that would be a fun one to watch.
Gary, didn't you see Parker earlier this year?
Yeah, me and Jeff saw them win the region at Mountain Brook in that, I think, 13-10 game. They were really impressive. Mountain Brook, they shot themselves in the foot a lot, didn't play their typical game, and they were still right there. But Parker made plays when they had to, and they looked really solid. And like Jeff said, they're a team that really looks built for this time of year. So I would look for them to go pretty far.
Yeah, Jeff, what do you think about Hartselle? Because this is a team that they knew they were going to take a step back. I mean, last year they had a great team and went 12-1, but this is a program that, like, they always have great regular seasons, and then it's hard for them to get over the hump in the playoffs. I mean, I think they've only been to the third round. Looking at it, they got there last year, and that was the first time in a decade. So do they have what it takes to put together a run?
That's a good question. I was at the Oxford. They beat Oxford by 1 point earlier in the year. I think it was week 5. And right before that, their starting quarterback got injured and he got knocked out for the year. So they brought in a receiver to play quarterback, and he's done a good job for him. It's just that's the problem is you got a backup quarterback running the offense. The Fletcher kid at running back is really, really good. They're another gritty defensive team that's going to keep you in the game. But the team that I like up there is Muscle Shoals. I think that's the team that in Muscle Shoals has beat Hartselle this year. To me, that's the team that's going to make some noise in 6A in the northern bracket. I haven't looked out to see when they would game 2 or 3 for them, but to me, the better of the teams that I have in my top 10 is Muscle Shoals. But Hartselle's going to be good defense, solid run game. But like I said, with their starting quarterback out, it definitely puts them sort of behind a little bit offensively.
Sure. And then you mentioned Muscle Shoals. This last set of games, Muscle Shoals gets Pinson Valley in the first round. Fort Payne hosts Mortimer Jordan. Clay-Chalkville will host Coleman, and Mountain Brook hosts Buckhorn. That Mountain Brook game will be on Thursday night as well. Jeff, you mentioned Muscle Shoals being a really good team. Clay-Chalkville, they're going to beat Coleman pretty easily. I don't think they're going to have a first-round shocker like they had last year. But this playoff, the way the bracket sets up for Clay-Chalkville is not easy. I mean, you look at it, they could potentially play Mountain Brook in the second round, Muscle Shoals in the third round, Parker in the semifinals, and then whoever comes out of the top half in the championship game. Like, there are no easy goings after this first round.
No,
I agree. Go ahead, Gary.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I agree. I just think that those teams, that bracket, if Clay runs through that gamut, that they're going to deserve to be wherever they wind up, because it's going to be very interesting to see, and they're going to have to, Bachway's going to have to play lights out for week after week after week. And, with him at quarterback, we'll see how that plays out for Clay-Chalkville. But, he's definitely got the skills to do it. To me, it's just comes down to, can he stay healthy through the playoff run? And because they're going to have to use him on offense.
Yeah, Gary, Clay-Chalkville is kind of, after they beat Thompson, everybody was talking about him. Everybody was like, wow, this is a great win. Well, then they've had 2 open dates They played Huffman, they played Shades Valley, and then they had a good win over Oxford. So other than that Oxford game, like the last 5 weeks, like nobody's really thought about Clay-Chalkville. So they're about to get back on the radar.
Yeah.
Do you think this sets up as a run for them? I mean, I know they're somewhat, you got to exercise those demons in the first round from last year. But other than that, I mean, does this team look like one that has what it takes?
I think so. I mean, it's just like y'all said. I mean, there's the way the bracket is set up now. It's tough in the top half of the bracket too. It just top to bottom, the bottom half of this bracket just looks a lot stronger. Like even if we saw a potential upset, and let's just say Parker didn't make it to the semifinals, well, then you're likely playing a team like probably Hartsville or somebody instead. I mean, even the an alternate opponent is like, okay, that's another really hard game. So I think it's going to be very much week to week, not overlooking anybody kind of playoff run for Clay-Chalkville. And maybe that was partially their Achilles heel last year, that in injuries, to score 0 points at home, but to be shocked, like that. I don't think they're going to be shocked by anybody any week these playoffs. So I still think they're likely bound for Tuscaloosa, but we'll see what happens week to week.
Yeah. Now, we can say all this, and then things like Parker 7, Clay-Chalkville 6 happen, and things like Saraland 57, Homewood 56 in overtime happen. There's so much to be decided. There's so much. It never goes chalk. We always expect it to. It never does. So both of y'all kind of give me a team that, outside of the Saraland and the Clay-Chalkville, that really you think if they ended up in the state championship game, it wouldn't be the most shocking thing in the world to you.
I think my team in 6A now, I think this would shock me if they got to the state championship game, but it wouldn't shock me if they make it to the semifinals. Is a team we haven't talked about yet at length, but is Benjamin Russell. Defense has got to show up, but they're a team that, Gabe Benton at quarterback is really good. Malcolm Simmons is obviously very, very good going to Auburn. And, this time of year, they're trending in the right way. They've been hot. They won the region. And they've got playmakers, and, as much as we talk about control a game, play good defense in November, that kind of thing, if you've got some studs on the other side of the ball, this is the time of year you ride those horses. So I would not be surprised at all if we're talking about a Saraland Benjamin Russell semifinal.
Yeah, I agree, Gary, on one point. I think that Benjamin Russell definitely has the guys on offense. I'm just not sure about their defense when they have to go up against a very good team that they can hold down the other team to win. To me, Helena's really one-sided on running the football, and they don't have much balance in their passing game. So I think if they go against a team that's a little bit more balanced, to me, they're going to struggle a little bit. But they definitely, when you can put special guys in your punt return and kick return, and they can score about any which way on offense when somebody touches the ball, they're definitely dynamic. But again, my two teams, if we're not going to say those two that you said, Kyle, I'm going to throw in Hillcrest and Parker.
I'll throw out, I don't know that they can get all the way there. But Jeff, we talked about it a little bit when they handled Carver the way that they did. But Pike Road is, didn't they win the state championship a couple of years ago?
Yes, in 5A.
Yeah, in 5A. And ever since, they kind of feel like a forgotten team. They haven't cracked the top 10, but they're 8-2. They lost to a Georgia team and they lost to Hillcrest at the start of the year, and ever since then they've been rolling. Now I think if they're going to if they were to make a run, they'd have to win some shootouts, I think. But they looked apart. I know, Jeff, you saw them a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. They're a very young team. They've got, like I said, not many freshman quarterbacks. We know Thompson has one that's doing pretty well. But this one's probably the next freshman quarterback that's having a great year. and he's putting up some good numbers and keeping that offense. He's doing enough in the passing game where they just can't load the box, and he's got some weapons at receiver. I mean, it's definitely. I mean, Pike Road is definitely a team under the radar. But I have to differ with you, Kyle, that they have been in my top 10 for most of the year. So somebody's known a little bit about them. But again, they're definitely a team that it wouldn't shock me. But again, they've got young guys on offense and more seniors leadership on defense. So we'll see how that. Like I said, the Blockton kid that's going to Auburn, man, he is good. I mean, he's in the backfield and disrupting teams, and to me, that's a great pickup for Auburn.
Let me cap this off by a little story time. I hope people don't forget, and I hate this game was at Saraland, and not many of us in the Birmingham area got to see it, but last year's second round playoff game between Homewood and Saraland has to be one of the most incredible football games ever played. I was actually looking back at this game a couple of days ago with our friend Steve Irvine. Saraland was up 27-0 after the first quarter of that game. Then it kind of goes back and forth for the next few quarters. Homewood forced overtime on a Hail Mary pass from Woods Ray to Jackson Paris. And then in overtime, Saraland scores. I got the ball first. And then Homewood scored. Ben Bergeson goes for 2. And if you've seen videos of that play, it's still very much in the air on whether or not Woods got in or not. If that game's played in Saraland, so if that game was played in Homewood, maybe the officials see it a little differently. Who knows? And that run never happens for Saraland. But nevertheless, Homewood gave Saraland such a great game last year. I'm just hopeful we get a few games close to that level in this playoff run. But it's going to be a lot of fun. The Super 7 this year, December the 6th through the 8th?
6.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
6th through the 8th at Bryant-Denny Stadium in Tuscaloosa. We hope, especially me and Gary, hope that some of our teams will get that far and give us something to write about, talk about at the Super 7. Jeff's one of these guys. He just covers the whole classification, so he knows that he'll be there no matter what. Smart.
I'll even be at the girls' game at 3, Kyle.
That's exactly right. So be ready for the day of the Red Devils on that Wednesday, and then we'll see beyond that on Thursday and Friday. It's going to be a lot of fun. Guys, any final thoughts heading into the playoffs, which are going to get going Thursday night for some teams and then for everybody else on Friday?
Hey, I'm just excited that there's some Thursday night football. I don't know why these games changed to some Thursday, but man, I'm excited about that, and I hope the second round has some Thursday night games also, so we can go out there and see a few more.
Yeah, that would be cool to see, Kyle. I think you tweeted about that maybe last week, but I know they're moving some of these games because of the potential for rain this Friday, but we've had 30-something games across all classifications move to Thursday. Let's just get to a point, like you said, Kyle, this is your idea, where we stagger the rounds so that we have 1A, 3A, 5A, 7A on Thursday or something, and 2, 4, 6A on Friday. I think it would maybe draw a lot more interest week to week, night to night, let some teams and games stand out that would get lost otherwise, and just give us more nights of games, who's ever going to say, I don't want more football,
Absolutely. And we all know that everybody at the AHSAA really listens to my thoughts and ideas. So yes, please take this into consideration on breaking up at least the first round. Thursday, half Friday.
I think I've already seen it on their agenda, Kyle, that your name's been there for Thursday games. I think I saw it as number 3 on their agenda next week.
I have been a point of conversation in a few of their meetings, but not for any reasons that people are proud of. So,
or pertain to football,
right? But yeah, let's do this, guys. It's going to be a fun playoff run. I'm sure we'll cross paths at some playoff games. Be sure to follow everything that we post. We'll be at games all for the next several weeks at least. I'm at Kyle Parmley on Twitter, at Gary A. Lloyd, and then at Alabama 6A football, Alabama 7A football. Tons of fun stuff coming. It's going to be a great few weeks. Guys, let's finish strong, all right?
Sounds good.
Looking forward to it.